Welcome to the latest edition of the New Haven Independent Vlog News Summary, direct from our assignment desk, otherwise known as my compost heap. Let's see what stories we're working on this hour. Well, there's a lot of salt, 21 ounces. We take years to go through that in our house. But you know where there's a lot of salt? 30,000 tons of salt sitting at Chapel at East Streets in Fairhaven, where a private company ships in the salt from places like Egypt and Brazil and Chile to then ship it out to other municipalities throughout Connecticut when there's storms to de-ice the roads. Now, because there's so much salt, they got a special permit. They don't have to enclose it inside. They're supposed to put a tarp, but that tarp comes off. And as the neighbors noticed, that salt leaches into the rivers and the soil. That's not good. Environmentalists and neighbors this week asked the DEP, that's the state environmental regulators, to either enforce the permit or not allow them to do that. And that argument is worth its salt. Allen Ginsberg's Howl, Detroit's J. Riddle famous peated bourbon. I think they go together well, but apparently booze and poetry and community don't go together well in Fairhaven. This week, neighbors in Fairhaven got the zoning board to shoot down a proposal to open a new bar on a place on Grand Avenue that would have poetry readings and gatherings. Their reasons were understandable. The neighbors had to fight for years to get rid of a notorious problem bar at that place that ran down the neighborhood full of crime. I would argue, though, in shooting down this proposal, they're confusing symptom with cause. Yes, you got to keep after all kinds of establishments to be responsible, including people who dump salt in big piles. But we don't want to kill community. We don't want to kill third places where you gather. If this person had no bad record before of operating establishment, we should encourage people to open these kind of communal third spaces with creative ideas, and then just make sure they follow the rules. Well, a couple of ribbons were cut this week, and it was kind of exciting. They cut a ribbon on a 5-unit house in Fairhaven Heights that's going to be devoted to people with mental health challenges who are receiving DBT, dialectic behavioral therapy. That's been catching on in recent years. It began as a way to deal with borderline personality disorder, a very severe kind of mental illness, and it's talk therapy, it's not medication. And it helps you understand how to get more control over your life and make good decisions so you can function well for now a whole range of mental health challenges. This is the first such residential facility for it in the state, and I think that's a way New Haven is staying ahead of the curve and being innovative and caring about each other. Way to go. Well, if you got your bike helmet ready, the ribbon was cut on the last New Haven portion of the Farmington Canal Trail under the Whitney Avenue Bridge near Audubon Street. It took 16 years to finish our stretch. The whole trail goes from Northampton all the way to New Haven Harbor, 80 miles for walking and biking. Now, some people are concerned because that tunnel under there will be open 24 hours. Late at night, they're worrying about crime or not being safe. We'll see. The city has a plan B ready if that happens. But it's a big win for people. It's a big win for the environment. It's a big win for a pedestrian and bike-friendly city. Well, here are some New Haven history books. City by Doug Ray, Saving American Cities by Elizabeth Cohen. We're always trying to understand our history and not kill it, but look at it with fresh eyes. We made a good step toward that this week in New Haven. It was announced that the city is taking the Columbus statue that we removed from Wooster Square Park in 2020 in the wake of the George Floyd protests. And instead of storing it out of public view, we're putting it in the new Lost in New Haven Museum, which hopefully at some point will be open to the public regularly. The reason I think that's a good idea is because this is the same debate that occurred since 2020 when Confederate statues were being removed. We don't want to eliminate history. You don't want to pretend it never happened. But there is a difference when there's context that in which we're celebrating a part of history we no longer celebrate. We understand it anew. I think this is the perfect way to see who we are, where we came, debate the whole thing without holding up our values as being something very different from what we believe in. Well, I just flew into Chicago and home from Detroit, and boy, are my arms tired. They would have been less tired, and I would have spent less money if I could have taken a Velo flight from Tweed New Haven Airport. They're cheaper and they're right here in town. But like thousands of other people, I will not fly a Velo. I'll go to Hartford or wherever else I need to go, because flying a Velo is participating in being complicit in evil. A Velo has decided that the way they stay in business is to make money flying prisoners unconstitutionally, illegally snatched from the street just because they're immigrants by the Trump administration's Department of Homeland Security, put on planes to a third country before they have their right to defend themselves against often made-up charges, and sent to notorious deadly prisons in places like El Salvador. Flying a Velo and supporting that is like taking the train companies' fares and supporting the Nazis in World War II when they snatched Jews and others off the street just because they were Jews, sent to the third countries to have them in death camps and labor camps. Till next time, this is the New Haven Independent Vlog News Summary. And remember, always pick up your trash and recycle it while we still can.